Quietly working on our do now. Quietly working on our do now. Periodic tables are out. You need that. That's your lifeline. Bohr model and Lewis structure for neon, and the 2 questions about isotopes and charges is from our practice and investigation yesterday. Seeing some good Bohr models and Lewis structures. Don't forget those 2 questions at the bottom. What is an isotope and what particles determine charge in an ion? Alright, take about 30 more seconds. 30 more seconds to remember where you are. Alright, let's take a look. So, we are drawing our Bohr models and Lewis structures. So, for the Bohr model, what are the first things that we need to know in order to draw this Bohr model, Sharon? I'm sorry? The element number. What does that tell me about this particle? How many protons and electrons? What else do we need to know in order to get started doing this? The atomic mass tells us the number of neutrons. So, looking at neon, how many protons do I have? 10. 10. Thank you. How many electrons?
10.
10. And how many neutrons? 11. Anybody not get 11? Jada, how do you get your neutrons from the atomic mass?
You subtract your protons, the number of protons from the atomic mass, and then round to the next one.
Exactly. Thank you. Alright, so now that I have this information, I can draw my nucleus. So I have my protons and my neutrons in my nucleus. Now, what period is neon in that's going to tell me how many energy levels I have?
2. Second period. My bad.
In the second period, so it has 2 energy levels. Thank you. Alright, so I have my 2 energy levels. Since I already took care of my protons and my neutrons, I'm now working with the electrons. How many go into the first energy level? 2. How many go into my second energy level? 8. Alright, so on the opposite side of the board, I drew out those 2 charts that we have been working with to give us quick reference. So if you can't remember how many electrons can fit into each of our periods or each of our orbitals, make sure that you have that on your periodic table to reference. Now that I have this Bohr model, I can easily convert that into a Lewis structure. Lewis structure is only concerned
electrons on the outside, on the.
That's me. Valence electrons. Valence electrons, which are the electrons that are where?
On the outer ring.
On the outer ring, exactly. So these are our valence electrons. So neon is a group, what?
18.
18, so it has how many valence electrons?
8.
8. Alright, so we fill in those electrons going around. Bam skis. This is what your Bohr model and Lewis structure should look like. Let me get 7 questions this year.
Alright, so why does it only worry about like the things on the energy level, the outer
What are
energy
these
level?
things called? Help them out.
Valence electrons?
Exactly.
So why does it only focus on the valence electrons on the outer on the outer energy level instead and not the two on the inside?
Thank you. Good question. So when we took our notes on Bohr versus Lewis, right? We said that Bohr was focused on the reaction that was happening when he was igniting our elements, right? He was like, what's happening as elements are being ignited? What's happening as we're adding energy? And that required him to look at all the electrons and where they were and how they were interacting with each other. Lewis is more concerned about how this atom or this element is going to bond or interact with another element, and in order for that to happen, all you need are these electrons. Remember, we talked about electron affinity and ionization energy being the energy it takes to remove an electron from another person, and the energy that you get from that energy being put back on you. So I can't take electrons from this middle part. It would be too hard and take too much energy for me to take electrons from this close to the nucleus. So it's easier for me to take ones that are on the outer ring, right? These are the ones that are out there for everybody else to take and will interact more frequently with other elements. So that's why you only worry about the valence or the Lewis structure and not the core electrons. Sharon question.
Can you make a Lewis structure out of transition metal?
Good question. So, transition metals, we could make a Bohr model and a Lewis structure for transition metals. However, they do not follow this pattern that we have been practicing and following on the board. So because they have different numbers of ions and isotopes and charges, they don't follow any particular pattern. So it'll be more complicated to talk about those, even though we will eventually. Alright? Let's look at problem number 2. What is an isotope? What's an isotope based on our simulation investigation? What is an isotope? Why are you raising her hand for her? Leave her alone.
You know it.
Let me see. Who do I want to ask about isotopes? Kareem, what's isotope? He's right there. I'm sorry? Protons and neutrons are element. Do we agree? Alright, let me think. You got some good stuff there, Kareem. So let's think back. Our protons do what for our element? If you think back to our simulation, when you added a proton into the simulation, what happened to the element here?
Unstable.
Huh?
Unstable.
Not talking about stability yet, but what happened to the name of the element? It changed. So the proton changes the element altogether. But when you add neutrons, what happens?
Nothing.
Nothing happens?
Something happened.
Something happened.
The name didn't change.
I think
it changed
The mass changes. I got it from Jada. So the mass changes. So our isotopes, when we looked at carbon 12, carbon 13, and all those other ones, we were changing the mass, not the element. Okay? So an isotope, to take what Kareem was saying, an isotope, go ahead, that's me.
She has it written down on her paper. Fine, and I'll read it. An isotope is an atom whose protons and neutrons aren't the same.
Not quite. Let's stick back
Okay.
there. Let's stick back there, even though that's some good information. Let's say the isotope is the same element with a different